In this video, we're going to investigate how tariffs and trading blocks impact international trade, along with the advantages and disadvantages of both. International trade. Think of the largest businesses in the world, such as McDonald's, Apple and Nike. They all operate on an international scale, providing their goods and services all around the globe. They all benefit from an increased number of consumers to sell their products to around the world. And by tapping into many different international markets, they increase the revenue potential of the business. So trading internationally is a very lucrative business strategy. However, trading internationally is not as simple as just deciding to trade internationally. There are potential barriers that exist that can make it difficult for these and other businesses to trade on a global scale and expand into other countries. The two main barriers we're going to cover today are tariffs, which is basically a tax on goods coming into a country, and trading blocks, which is a group of countries that have entered into an agreement that protects their economic interests. Let's have a look at each of these potential barriers in more detail. Tariffs. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. Imported goods are products being brought into the country from another country. For example, coffee being imported into the UK from Costa Rica, whereas exported goods would be the UK selling items such as machinery overseas to another country. A tariff is very clearly a barrier to trade, as it effectively places a tax on these goods and services coming into the country from another. This makes these foreign goods coming from other countries more expensive than the ones made and sold domestically in this country. By making these products more expensive, this is a barrier to international trade, as it makes goods from abroad more expensive and less competitive than products that are sold in this country. Let's take a look at a very simplified example. Let's say the cost of a car made and sold in the UK is £20,000. Let's also say you can purchase an imported car from Japan for £18,000, saving you £2,000. However, the UK government decides to place an import tax of 25% on Japanese cars. This would now make the £18,000 car cost £22,500, meaning that it would now be more expensive than the UK car. This example in theory would mean demand would drop for the Japanese cars and in turn put a barrier in the way of international trade, as demand for imports would drop. Tariffs are also used to promote and protect businesses in their own country and make the option of importing more expensive. So what impact do tariffs really have? Tariffs do have their advantages and disadvantages, and although it can limit international trade, there are reasons governments use tariffs. One of the most obvious advantages is that it means domestic products can compete with foreign alternatives, where production costs and labour is usually cheaper. A tariff makes the goods equal to or cheaper than international competitors. An obvious benefit for the government is that it increases their revenues, as tariffs are paid directly to the government. An argument often touted by politicians who advocate tariffs is that it protects jobs, especially in manufacturing, where tariffs discourage companies moving manufacturing overseas and in turn saving jobs. However, there are downsides to tariffs. Ultimately, tariffs make goods more expensive for the end consumer. We buy products affected by tariffs every day. Food, clothes, cars and electronics usually all have tariffs placed on them. Another disadvantage is tariffs are rarely one-sided. and if one country imposes a tariff on another country, then they often retaliate by putting tariffs on their goods. And finally, the counter-argument is that jobs are often lost elsewhere through tariffs. So for example, in the export industry, where if the country is exporting less, jobs in exports will decrease. What is clear is that tariffs can definitely act as a barrier to international trade, but depending on your perspective, you can see them as a good or a bad thing. Trading blocks are also a potential barrier to international trade. A trading bloc is a group of countries in a geographical area, such as Europe, that have come together to protect themselves economically from countries outside of this group. They put agreements in place to allow them to trade easily with one another without any tariffs that we mentioned earlier. However, such trading blocks become barriers to international trade as it places restrictions on goods or services coming into the bloc from countries outside of that bloc and their agreement. Therefore, a trading bloc is a barrier to true international trade, as it makes the free movement of goods and services much more difficult. Examples of trading blocs are NAFTA, the EU, and APEC. Each of these has their own set of rules that benefits only those that are part of that bloc, and this is what hinders global trade. If you're not part of that trading bloc, or do not have a trade agreement with that country, then you fall into WTO rules, which is the World Trade Organization, that has a set of rules for international trade, which are much less favourable than those who are within inside these blocs. The European Union is a prime example of a trading bloc. All of the countries within the EU can trade freely with each other, which means that no tariffs are put in place on goods or services from within the bloc. This makes goods and services cheaper, which is good for both businesses that export and businesses that import within the EU. However, this is not good at all for countries outside of the EU, as they have to set up trade agreements with the bloc as a whole, and the EU also has put tariffs on goods and services from outside of the bloc, which again acts as a barrier to international trade. Like tariffs, trading blocs have their advantages and disadvantages. The advantages mainly come for those inside the bloc. The disadvantages of trading blocs, and the most obvious one, is importing and exporting to countries outside of the bloc is much more expensive. Another disadvantage is that usually you can only be part of one trading bloc, and these are usually based on geographical location. As you saw in the examples, NAFTA is in North America, APEC is in Asia, the EU is in Europe, and they all have their own trading blocs. The final disadvantage is that you can lose your ability to negotiate your own trade deals with countries outside of the bloc, as these are normally negotiated by the bloc as a whole. Most of the benefits we've covered, but the most obvious one is free trade, in terms of no tariffs when trading with countries that are inside that bloc. The benefits of trading blocs are not only tariff-free goods, but also, in a lot of cases, the free movement of people, which can benefit companies who have an international presence, as they can move employees around internationally without the long wait times and costs associated with different countries' visa requirements. Finally, it can help foster strong relationships between countries within the blocs, as they have a shared interest in the economic stability of those countries, as they are all intertwined much more than they were before. All in all, despite tariffs and trading blocs being a potential barrier to international trade, they do play a major role in how business is conducted internationally and the relationships countries have with one another. Whether this is for the better or for the worse is yet to be seen. Thanks for watching the video. We really do appreciate you watching to the end. And if you found this video useful, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more weekly business videos.